Two-thirds of India's population lives in villages, and the major occupation of people who live in villages is still agriculture. But how the future of manufacturing also lies in rural sector, that is what we are going to read today. Hi everyone, welcome back to Equipoiseclasses Classes. I am Surbhi Gupta, and in these videos we pick up a topic directly from the newspaper, read it from the newspaper to understand the topic better, to understand authors' emotions better, and to understand how to read newspaper basically. So yeah, with that, I would want to share the article that we are going to do today. And let's quickly start reading it. Already highlighted the parts, and as I've said, the future of Indian manufacturing lies in rural India. So how is that so? That's what we are going to discuss today. So this article is from Ijaz Khani. And as you can see that he is a fellow at Pune International Development Center and former lead economist at the World Bank. He's been, so if he's quoting or writing something, it is important. And I bet that, this article is very, very informative and very good and innovative. So let's just give it a read. I'll share the pen. Yeah, hold on. All right. So, a major explanation for India's manufacturing sector remaining stagnant despite policy efforts to stimulate its growth lies in the changing traits of industrialization, with India being the latecomer only making it more challenging. So, we are saying that India, in the manufacturing growth sector, has been a latecomer, and that has been one of the major reasons for stagnant growth in manufacturing sector as we see it today. Okay, in China and United States, industrialization and urbanization took place together. So industrialization and urbanization was happening together in US and China. However, urbanization and investment in cities promoted the manufacturing sector as well as the factories, that manufacturing sector, overall located in the major cities, which was boosting further investments in the factories also. So they benefited from improved infrastructure, supply chain, and agglomeration economies. So everything helped when urbanization and industrialization took place together in those countries. This is not happening in India. Okay, so as the paths of urbanization and industrialization have diverged in India, there the paths converge. Industrialization took place, the factories were being set up in the areas, it was urbanizing. So the two things were happening simultaneously, which was not the case in India. Okay, so they did move together in the 1990s. 1990s with LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization with new economic policy and all the reforms. We started with industrialization and urbanization together, but they then diverged later. Okay, the manufacturing sector is de-urbanizing and relocating to small towns and rural areas to stay cost competitive. So the manufacturing sector in India is not being established in the urbanized areas. We are setting up manufacturing units in the rural areas just to save the cost, to cut on the competition. The sector's share in employment output and number of enterprises in mega cities and urban areas has been declining while it is growing in small towns and rural areas. Cost saving के लिए लेबर सस्ते में पड़ेगी, लैंड सस्ते में मिल रहा है, बड़ा बड़ा एरिया है रूरल सेक्टर में, अर्बन एरियाज में तो लैंड ही नहीं है इतना कि बड़ी बड़ी फैक्ट्री सेटअप हो पाए. ये सारे रीजंस है कहीं ना कहीं. ठीक है. Inadequate physical and human infrastructure, as I said, inadequate physical and human infrastructure in these geographies, however, has prevented the sector from growing rapidly. So has the de-urbanization of manufacturing become a binding constraint on countries' industrialization? No, it hasn't. So we are saying it is not entirely bad that the industrialization is shifting towards rural areas. How? An empirical analysis of spatial location of manufacturing enterprises in 600 districts. So we are taking a data basically of 600 districts जहाँ पर local areas में, rural areas में manufacturing unit setup हुई है. ठीक है. And वो दिखा रहा है dispersion of the sector away from urban to rural. क्योंकि rural sectors में develop हो रहा है. ठीक है. Has been associated with more efficient allocation of enterprises by geography. This is good for economic growth and job creation. ठीक है। अब यहाँ पर अगर मैं एक सर्कल बनाऊं और ये आपका अर्बन एरिया है, अर्बन एरिया में लैंड ही नहीं है, स्पेस ही नहीं है, लोग ही नहीं है काम करेंगे जो आपके मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट पे। रूरल एरिया में ये सारे इश्यूज नहीं है। रूरल एरिया में अगर आप यहाँ पे लैंड है और यहाँ पे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फैक्ट्री सेटअप करते हो, तो यहाँ पे आसपास से एरिया में आपको ट्रांसपोर्टेशन, जो लेबर है, लेबर कॉस्ट कम पड़ेगी, सस्ते में पड़ेगी, जॉब्स क्रिएट होंगी जो कि रिक्वायर्ड है। क्योंकि अगर यहाँ एग्रीकल्चर मेजर ऑक्यूपेशन है, पर एग्रीकल्चर में भी आप देखोगे डिस्गाइज्ड अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट है, राइट। ज्यादा लोग हैं फार्म पे जिनकी जरूरत है, उससे कई ज्यादा लोग हैं, तो बेटर है उनको आप शिफ्ट करो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट्स की तरफ, राइट। So scaling of physical and human infrastructure there will accelerate pace of industrialization and enable these regions to become growth engines. This will also reduce huge spatial and sub-national disparities in the economic geography of industrialization. It will further encourage non-farming activities and support rural development and job creation, which agriculture alone is not able to do. Unfortunately, small towns have been overlooked in the political discourse. India needs to change its investment strategy and to focus on the small towns. Basically, the rural areas have more land and much more to gain from youth demographic dividend. Right? There's a lot of youth in rural areas. There's a lot of facilities there for the manufacturing unit to set up. If India's financing needs for a rural structural transformation, what is structural transformation? When the major occupation of people living there is agriculture, you are changing the structure of development to manufacturing. So for that, we need, the rural areas does have their financing needs. So government should help the financial transformation there. So is the potential for attracting private investment to rural zones. That is important. Now the basic characteristics of rural infrastructure projects, which promise a steady revenue stream and returns on investment that exceed inflation, make them attractive for most institutional investors. While private institutional investors have over $100 trillion under the management globally, their allocation for rural infrastructure still remains tiny. So we are saying that private investors can do a lot, but their investment in rural areas is still tiny. Rural distress will not be resolved just through agricultural pricing reforms. We are only focusing to develop the rural sector and to help them grow further and to relieve them from the rural distress. We are focusing on agricultural pricing scheme, but rural distress will not go away from agricultural pricing schemes. We need a structural transformation that expands manufacturing, leverage India's demographic dividend, where median age of our population is 28 years as we see. So we have a lot of demographic dividend. We should leverage it. We should use it to its full potential, right? So it basically enlarges the middle class, promotes gender equality, speeds up the country's march towards net zero emissions, and create more jobs. We are focusing there because as of now, we are a developing nation, but we are aiming towards Viksit Bharat, that is being a developed nation by 2047, क्योंकि हमें 100 साल हो जाएंगे आजादी मिले हुए. India's rural areas are home to the largest concentration of poor people. And most of the poor people live with no access to education, healthcare, roads, electricity, and internet services. The standoff between farmers and the government and rising rural protests are not just an expression of discontent, but a reflection of rural distress, right? People in rural areas have higher aspirations today and are demanding more jobs and a better quality of life. Addressing rural distress could unleash the next stage of larger structural transformation and help the country achieve its longer term growth goals. Okay, so far the long awaited transformation of India from rural agrarian to urban industrialized economy, okay, has not materialized. The Indian economy is missing the broad changes that were experienced by successful East Asian economies after they embarked on the process of industrialization, like you can see that of China, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea. These countries saw much of their agrarian workforce leave the countryside and settle with their families in urban spaces to work in fast expanding industrialized units and participate in the rapidly growing urban centric economy. India clearly has not followed that path. That is why we are lagging behind. But हमारे इन countries से कुछ एक फायदा भी है हमें कि ये countries में जो population है अब वो aging population है. अगर इन्होंने जल्दी start किया था तो इनकी population अब aging हो गई है. अगर हमने late start किया पर हमारे पास demographic dividend और technology का फायदा है. right? That is what we are going to read further. More than 40% of India's total employment is still in agricultural sector, compared to less than 20% in China and less than 2% in United States. में तो है ही नहीं, less than 2% agriculture में है ही नहीं लोग. India's depend Indians depend on farming not because it's remunerative, but because there are few non-farm job opportunity. Option नहीं है ना उनके पास. तो तुम्हें लगता है वो फार्मर बनना चाहते हैं? नहीं, वो नहीं बनना चाहते. वो फार्म एक्टिविटी पे डिपेंड नहीं होना चाहते. लेकिन क्योंकि नॉन फार्म अपॉर्चुनिटीज है ही नहीं, तो वो जाए कहाँ? All this strengthens the argument in favor of major rural development thrust. हम बार बार यही बोल रहे हैं, स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन चाहिए, रूरल एरियाज में डेवलपमेंट चाहिए. Improving rural infrastructure could potentially lead to four-fold increase in job growth. If job creation is policy priority, policymakers should focus on scaling up investment in human and physical infrastructure in rural areas, where the biggest potential lies for manufacturing sector to expand and create more jobs. Okay, to be clear, India has not yet lost the global manufacturing race. Why we have not lost? Because unlike China, Europe, and US, which have aging populations, we have the advantage of a demographic dividend. We have the largest youth bulge in the world. With our working age population increasing in comparison with dependent population, the situation expected to last until 2040. So year 2040 tak, we have that advantage. As a latecomer to industrialization, as we read earlier कि हम latecomers हैं, बाकी countries पहले आ गई थी, US, China सब पहले industrialize हो गए थे, लेकिन इंडिया के पास advantage है जो उनके पास नहीं थी. We have access to technology, processes that can support green growth. Global diversification of supply chain away from China will also help. Right now there's the diversification and जो supply chain है वो चाइना से शिफ्ट होकर और जो इन्वेस्टमेंट है वो चाइना से शिफ्ट होकर कहीं और जा रही है, तो वो भी इंडिया को हेल्प कर सकता है. बट उसमें क्या मेजर फैक्टर है जो रोल प्ले करेगा, वो है कि आवर गवर्नमेंट्स नीड टू एक्ट एज फास्ट एज दे कैन बिफोर दे लूज दिस streak and before we lose even this opportunity that we have. With that, I would want to wrap up the session. I hope it was useful for you in some or the other way. If yes, you know how to show that. Like and share this video to everybody who you would feel will benefit from watching these videos, and it will basically increase their awareness about what is happening across us. And also you have to hit that subscribe button because it hardly takes 10 seconds, less than 10 seconds, but every one subscription of yours means a lot to me. So thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow with another one. Till then, take care, keep smiling, stay healthy, and bye.